Ooh, transition. I have a green tea here. Very hot. Too hot. Okay. To get started, I did do some skincare. I really wanted to focus on is minimizing the appearance of my textured skin. I do have like post-acne marks. I don't really have wrinkles because I'm 26, or they'll be coming soon, but what Nina's makeup really focuses on is having as smooth of a palette as possible. Obviously, you know, the women she's working with are absolutely beautiful and they probably have access to top of the line beauty treatments, which is probably not accessible for the average person, but we are gonna work with what we have. The key things about her base, apart from just how smooth it is it reflects light very naturally. So I've chosen to focus on products that don't highlight or don't have highlighter or sparkle in them, but the glow comes from more like finely milled particles and sort of, they're more light reflecting than sparkly, if that makes sense. I forgot to put my hair up. Just get it out of my face so I can put bronzer into my hairline with no problems. I am just gonna start with a dense, fluffy brush. Once again, you can do this part with your fingers. A lot of base products apply a lot more smoother with the fingers in general, but here I am just gonna use a brush to apply because I want like a nice sheer application all over the face. And definitely, you can definitely apply in layers and also parts. The key thing is just to get an even layer across all of your skin, including your eyes. So I kind of like to work like on half of my face with the amount I just applied. Making sure to really hydrate damp, patchy spots as well, near my mouth and my nose. And then just repeating that on the other side. If you are going out to an event, please obviously cover your neck. I'm gonna be sitting in glam at home, so I am not gonna bother doing that, but please do that if you are actually stepping out of the house, so your face and neck look as cohesive as possible. For the next step, I kind of played around with a few different ways to do this. What I would recommend is, just because the way she applies the makeup is so flawless, from her Instagram videos, it does appear that she does the full base, and then she applies eye makeup. This is also very common with Korean makeup, but for this tutorial specifically, I wanted to mimic Margaret Qualley's eyeshadow liner. It looks like it's a eyeliner that's been blended at the top, but it's still very sharp at the sides. So I am going to use some medical tape to kind of carve that line out, and then I'm going to do the rest of my base makeup. To start, however, I am going to apply concealer to my whole face. From what I can see in the images, none of the actresses or singers who's doing makeup on have a very like bright under eye or bright chin, etc. It just looks like those areas are kind of a little bit brightened. So for that, I am going to use the underpainting method to kind of bring those features back into focus. Here, once again, you can do the whole dot method. I am going to take out a good amount of product onto my hand, and then select a dense, kind of fluffy brush. Obviously, the more detail you want, the smaller you can go. This is about the smallest I can go before I start losing my mind. So we're gonna work with this. And what I kind of like to do is just get up really nice and close, which I might be able to do here as well, and just kind of start patting it right underneath my eye. It's okay to do a lot of it at first. Remember, we are underpainting and also working on layers, so there's no need to panic. The most important thing is getting the product on in the first place and making sure that it's there. I have made the unfortunate mistake of my makeup where I've applied concealer to one side, maybe when I'm like testing out a look or just doing things, and then I finish everything, powders on, setting spray. I am also taking this up into my eye, by the way, because that is going to be very, very important for creating an even base. And I do have some hyperpigmentation on my eyes, which is obviously very, very common for brown women. But I am going to take that all the way up into my brow bone and just pat and blend until it's nice and cohesive and I don't have any clumping. But as I was saying earlier, like all the way up until setting spray, and I'm looking at myself and I'm like, something a bit off. Right, I haven't done concealer. Either under my eye or right next to my nose. That seems to be a spot that I forget all the time. So we are not doing that today. Today we are going to be blending and doing a good job. I typically like to drag concealer all the way across this kind of area here where the nose and the cheek meet, and down, just to cover any hyperpigmentation around that area. Once again, they didn't have any like really bright spots. It just looks like those features are kind of brought into focus. So that's what I've kind of done here. I'm working on evening out my skin tone without, and also bringing those features into focus without amplifying them too much. So now that that's done, we are going to let the concealer set by itself. And we kind of want it to settle into the fine lines, which I know seems a little bit counterintuitive, but you will shortly see why. You kind of want to take about, I would say 2.5 or 2 inches of tape. Highly, highly recommend. You do not want this irritating, tearing, pulling on the very delicate skin around your eyes. So just take a little bit. I am going to use the longer side. You just need one sharp side. The other side doesn't really matter. And the way I want you to align this is find the angle at which your brow arches and then kind of drag it down and pop it underneath your eyelashes. Very important because you don't want to pull your eyelashes. Kind of let your eye shape settle and then just place it. I like the placement here, which you can see because I have left like a little bit of a gap underneath my eye. That's what we want to make sure. We don't want it to be too high when we're actually placing the tape. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and get that realigned. There we go. That's it. Makeup tutorial done. No, I'm kidding. What we are going to work on now is kind of blocking out the eye and enhancing the natural eye shape. I do have quite a few people for reference here. The look that I am going to be focusing on, however, is Margaret Qualley's. I just find that the tones and everything really, really accentuate her eye features. So that is what I am going to try and mimic. For the most part, this is quite a simple eye tutorial. It just requires a lot of patience and working in small sections and blending, but also carefully blending because you don't want everything to start blending together and then look super, super muddy. I'm just taking off the mirror on my brand new Sampler mini palette. What I am going to do first is, now that we have applied concealer, you can kind of already see that it's running into my creases. I am going to block that off. I am just going to be using a little bit of this white or cream eyeshadow and then just patting it in. Not with too dense of a brush, a somewhat dense brush. It's more fluffy than dense, I would say. And you just kind of want to pat it in. Once again, working in layers and blending all over the eye. This will just help smooth and brighten everything out so that when you're actually applying your eyeshadow, eyeliner, and doing whatever you need to do, you have as smooth of a base as possible. So once again, just pat and then blend. think that looks good. What I am going to be applying next is a more cool toned brown eyeshadow. Once again, you really want to work slow. Slow and controlled is the name of the game. There's a few looks where she goes a little bit more rosy. I'm going to show you how we get that effect as well. We're just working on that outer third of the eye, really getting into the lash line and kind of elongating the eye. So if you have kind of hooded eyelids like me, you want to look down and kind of also add eyeshadow to that top part of the lid that's covering your eye. Obviously you want to add it to the crease as well, and you want to drag it out. You want to elongate the eye here. We'll fix it obviously when we take the tape off, but here you're really using the tape to guide that part of the process. So here I have a little bit of problem. I use the shorter end of the tape, so we're gonna have to be a little bit more careful. But once again, I'm gonna show you how to clean that up. And also, you don't need tape for this. It just makes your life easier. So if it is making your life harder for whatever reason, stop using tape. Boom. What I am gonna do now is take a sort of peachy cream shade, top off the excess, and kind of run it over the center of the lid just to remove any harsh spots from that brown shadow. So just adding a little bit more of a blend here. Nothing crazy. We're not trying to erase it by any means, just warming that area up and cleaning it up. What I'm gonna do now is add that rosiness back. Obviously there's a lot of layering going on with her base products, but something that you can always see is that the tones used throughout the face, all the way from the eyes to the blush to the lips, they're very much all in the same color family. So if she's using a mauve eyeshadow, she's gonna carry that through to the lips, to the cheeks, etc. Maybe there'll be different shades, but they're always going to be the same tonal family. What I'm going to do here is, this is the powder blush that I will be using on my cheeks. I am going to take, not that much, I don't know why I did that. Always tap out the excess. If you're not sure how much is on your brush, check on the back of your hand. You really don't want too much. And then I'm going to go over that brown just in the crease and kind of like in that upper lid area. And I'm going to flush it out. We're really talking about flushing it out. You just want a hint of pink, which hopefully my camera is picking up. But really that's the difference. That's it. You should be seeing that this side is more brown and this side is a little bit more pink. So we're just gonna do that again. The most fun part, which is the eyeliner. What I would recommend, there's probably a ton of ways she did this. You can probably take a gel eyeliner, which I had here at some point. There we go. Gel eyeliner. And while you've actually put it down and it's almost going to set, you smudge it out. The risk with that is that it sets too fast, you can't smudge it out, and then you're kind of going to have to start from scratch, especially if you're using something that's waterproof. What my preferred method is to slowly kind of build and smudge out an eyeshadow. That's why I prefer the tape method. You can experiment with creating a more sharper wing by wetting your brush using a very, very thin angled brush and setting it with makeup setting spray. That's a very, very common way of doing things. What I am going to do is take a slightly cool toned brown shadow. And first I'm going to take it dry and kind of get it on all sides of my brush. So the sides and the taper. And then I'm going to close my eye as much as I can. And I'm going to start adding that eyeliner. I'm going to be very, very, very intentional about this. Looking at Margaret's photo, it does look like she has a thin line all over her eye. I'm not going to do that with, so sorry, I'm not gonna apply the same thickness all over the eye. I am going to focus on having a thicker section on the outer part and then carefully going over the inside. You can do that either with a thinner brush. I am going to do with this brush, but I'm going to wet it and do that so that I can get the brush as skinny as possible. But for now, I'm just going to work on making sure that I'm tapping and making sure that I'm covering the area that's closest to my eye line so that it's as cohesive as possible. Sometimes if your lashes come down, then I would recommend literally combing them up so you can actually see if there's any gaps in the eye line. I can see that there's none, so that's great. I'm gonna keep going. And you don't want the line to be super long either. She uses eyeliner on the majority of her clients. I think really it was just the Jessie Buckley look that she didn't use it for. What she's just doing is just elongating the shape. That's all we're doing. That's the crux of her makeup. It's almost an elevated form of clean girl makeup, and I know collectively we are moving away from that. But this is just a really nice look. Like if you have an interview, or you're just going out and you want something a little bit more elevated, and obviously it's a lot more makeup than clean girl makeup. So it's a nice compromise, I would say. I'm sure this would also be good wedding makeup. One thing I can't really comment on is longevity. I've seen a lot of wedding makeup artists prepare their clients as if they're going off to war. I'm not really sure if this would stand up to that. Perhaps it's like, with a really good setting spray, you could figure something out, but once again, not really sure about taking this off to war. Okay, now, what I'm going to be doing, which once again, there's many ways you could do this. You could do this with gel eyeliner, liquid eyeliner, etc. This is just my preferred method. A few spritzes on my eyeshadow brush, and then tap it into, or swipe it, I should say, swipe it into the eyeshadow. And now you can kind of see that it's caked up, or if you can't see it then I'm sorry. But essentially it will create a much more denser finish. I am gonna wet it again, just for luck. For peace of mind, I should say. And now I'm just gonna go to my inner lid and very, very, very carefully trace out a line. You almost just want to cover your eye line. It'll make a bigger difference once I actually apply mascara, but that should be it. I am going to kind of go over again the eyeshadow on my left side, my eyeliner portion. Moment of truth. Perfect. I could maybe darken this side out a little. You want to be very careful when you're doing that. But apart from that, I think we have the eyes done. They're lovely, they're blended, they're exactly what I wanted them to be. I might add a little bit more blush, but we will see about that when we actually get there. Great, so now we're on to base. When we're talking about Nina Park makeup, we have to talk about the fact that, once again, her base it's not really glam. It's more about amplifying your natural features. And once again, sticking to a fixed tonal family. Part of that is, I think that she does layer cream and powder products that, whenever she's doing product showcases, working with her clients, that's typically what she does. So that's what we are going to be doing here as well. Contour. I currently use a concealer, sue me. I do feel that this gives just the most natural finish. The other thing is that it tends to be more neutral. A lot of contours tend to be too gray on me because I pull very, very warm. And then I do like a good bronzer because then it kind of looks like a contour. But my preferred is always a concealer, because the advantage of the concealer is it's meant to conceal, so it almost gives you like an airbrushed finish when you're actually done, when you're actually using it as a bronzer, and it just looks the most natural. Now when you're applying, you know, any sort of shading product, you really want to make sure you're getting into your hairline. As you can see here, I do because I think because of my hairline tends to be a lot lighter than the skin on my face, but what I'm really emphasizing here is not just going crazy bronzing, it's just applying it in areas where there would be a natural shadow. I'm just bringing back a natural warmth into my skin tone, because obviously I took a decent amount of it away when I was actually applying concealer. And once again, it can be a little bit stronger than you need because we are underpainting, and I do want to stress that. But this is going to give you a nice, lovely base for your blush as well. That she's using makeup to enhance her clients' natural features. We're doing the same here. We're really working with what we have, and emphasizing that in order to create a perfect finish. Great. Okay. So now that that part's done, a great mental debate I have been having with myself is, because I've experimented with both finishes, underpainting the blush. Now, the problem is that even by, you know, layering my foundation, I find that if I put the cream blush underneath, it does disappear. Which means I have to put a lot more of it on. But then, you know, unless you're using something like the Danessa Myricks blush, which is really, really good for layering, and no matter how much you put on there, the pigment will increase, but the texture won't increase. Most of the blushes I'm using, the texture does increase. That's what we're not going to do. So just taking my foundation, applying a very little amount of it, and just absolutely coating my brush in it. And once again, we are going to work in layers. Now we've already concealed. I don't really want to go too much over that. I'm actually starting a little bit under, and we're just going to kind of cover the entire cheek area with that. You can really avoid going into areas that you've already coated. So wherever I coated with the contour, etc., I'm not really going to focus there. It's just those areas that I maybe don't have anything whatsoever. That's why you really do not need too much foundation. Removing texture or blurring it out as much as possible can seem a little bit counterintuitive, because, you know, you have a lot of acne, etc., and this was me, but before my Accutane journey, you kind of think, oh, I just need to glob on a ton of foundation to kind of cover it. Doing the opposite is actually a really, really good idea, because when you're working in layers, and we're kind of working around your acne, you're almost like filling in the cavities. And also, if you get a nice even layer, the way light reflects off of your skin can hide a lot of imperfections and texture as well. I'm gonna get started on now is the blush. I love Nudestix, they're a Canadian company, and their stuff is really, really good and versatile. What I am gonna do here, this looks a bit interesting. It actually finishes into a really lovely terracotta peachy shade, which I know looks a little bit antithetical to what you actually see of the product. And once again, I'm going to work in really, really light layers. I'm gonna use one of these. I saw her using it and I thought it was absolutely genius, because it really helps you get as much control as possible. So that's what we're gonna do. I just took some directly from the product because it's a cream product. And now this is where you have to really, really think about placement. I know that it's a huge trend. I do it too, of carrying blush all the way up into your eyelid. She does not do that. She essentially works in this triangle here, which I'm gonna try and draw to the best of my ability. She kind of follows the cheek's natural lift, stops right at the center where your pupil is, and then follows it once again in a nice little curved shape, just the natural shape of your cheek. And then she stops actually a little bit below where the cheek ends. So she stops somewhere here. And then you kind of just want to fill in that triangle. The other thing too, if you work in layers, you won't look cakey, but you're also not going to be taking your makeup off. Sometimes I find that if I swipe makeup products directly onto my skin and then kind of blend it out, one, it has a tendency to look quite muddy. But also, I tend to take all of my carefully placed base products off, which is obviously very, very counterintuitive. So we are not going to do that today. So once again, just swirl, swirl, swirl. You really do want to make sure you're covering product as much as possible. And we're going to work in that triangle once again. Great. So now that that's done, cap your cream products. Otherwise they will roll off and smush and you will be devastated. So now that that's done, I do want to set my face. Now, this is a really, really, really crucial part. I do not believe she bakes. I haven't really seen it in any of her Instagram videos. It's not at all common in, like, for Korean artists in general. What I do is I just use a translucent blurring powder. The Laura Mercier is my ride or die. If you have any suggestions, let me know, but that's like literally the best one I've ever used. And I cover a really big fluffy brush with it. Tap off the excess. If you need to, roll it onto your hand and get off the excess. What we're really looking to do here is just set your makeup without removing any of this natural luminosity that we've built into it, okay? The other thing is, now that we've actually worn our concealer for a little bit, you're going to look right into your eyes, kind of scrunch up your eye, and then brush out wherever that excess has concealer has settled, and then you're gonna pat. My fluffy brush has a little taper on it. I would highly recommend this because it almost works the same way as those fluffy brushes, sorry, the puffs with a triangle at the end, where you're actually able to get underneath your eye and into the creases around your eye. So once again, just setting. I would honestly recommend that you set your whole face, because once again, we want to make sure things are nice and even. You can see I haven't really taken out any of the natural luminosity. So that's what we wanted. We don't want it to go anywhere. We're removing all excess oil because obviously the clients she works with are absolutely beautiful, and they probably do facials every single week, but you can see their natural texture. She just makes sure that she hides it as naturally as possible. So that's what we are going to do. Now for the next step, I am going to take a powder blush. This is the same one that we applied in the crease. I'm kind of taking this fluffier domed brush here, covering it thoroughly, name of the game. It is still relatively small, I would say. I'd say it's like a perfect size for a blush brush, especially a powder one. And then exactly where we kind of applied the cream blush, we are going to apply this. Now this is your final layer. You don't have anything covering this. You have to be very, very careful. So if you are crazy paranoid and you need the structure, use the smaller brush. I have worked with this blush and brush extensively, so I know what I'm doing. But if you need the extra reassurance, go smaller, okay? So once again, we are gonna work in that triangle. And here I would say carefully swipe. This is a slightly luminous blush, so it does have like finely milled sparkles in it. So it is gonna give you a little bit of a glow back to the skin, which is important because once again, like there's this gorgeous, I think it was after Jessie Buckley got her glam, and it almost looks like she has nothing on her skin, but there's like a sheen. When she turned her cheek, there was like a nice, gorgeous, bright line, like a glow. And that's kind of what I want to mimic. Obviously, the main picture that I'm using here for reference are, or pictures I should say, are Lofi's and Margaret's looks, which are a bit more matte. But that luminosity really, really stood out. I am just brushing out my brows. I think she just leaves their brows as natural as possible, kind of brushes them into place with a gel, and then fills them in. Brown girls, let's sit this one out. Okay, great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mimic what was done on the top, on the bottom. Here you want to work with a very small brush. This is fine, this is dense, this could work. But if you're even more paranoid, go with something even smaller. So that's what we're going to do here. We are going to take that nice brown that we put in the crease, put it on the brush, tap off excess always, pop it on the back of your hand if you're really paranoid. And we are going to apply the excess on the outside and taper off at the middle where your pupil is. That's it for that. Let's get our eyes done. So eyelash curler of your choice. This is just a crappy Sephora collection one. Obviously use a better one if you have it. This is what I use. And we'll continue to be using. Okay, eyelashes curled. For her looks, this is the other thing, because everything looks so intentional. The way Korean artists apply mascara is like an art form, okay? They typically take like, you know, a wooden, almost like a matchstick or like a wooden stick. They heat it up so it's nice and hot, and especially because I know a lot of Asian people tend to have lashes that are really thick, but they point straight down. So you're really gonna have to like put a little bit of effort to making sure that they curl. The other thing is that she does not use clumping mascara. She's not really going for volume here. She's going for definition. So that's what you should be aiming for when you select a mascara. What I'm gonna do here is I'm just going to comb through my lashes with the mascara. So this way I'm avoiding any clumps and I'm just enhancing my natural lashes. The other thing too, you wanna be really careful here not to go over the eyeshadow or eyeshadow liner, I should say, that you so painstakingly just put down. Other eye. The keyword for Nina Park's makeup is patience. The second keyword might be layering, but first one is absolutely patience. Great, so I think that's the bulk of the face done. What I am gonna be doing now is her lips, which this is a bit tricky, okay? I would say take your concealer, take a little bit on the back of your hand, just a smidge, and all we're going to do is, if you have hyperpigmentation or like two-toned lips, which I know a lot of brown women have, and which I do, like you can see that what you're gonna do is blot this out just a little bit. Just neutralize it a little bit. But what this is gonna do is just give you a more natural looking base. She doesn't really line lips, or she lines them with a tone that's very similar to the lipstick she's using. Because I was using such a pinky tone, I am going to, you know, same tone, different shades, that's what I would say. Like a brownie pink, that's what I'm going to be using for my lips as well. Many ways you can do this. The most conservative way would probably be taking a little bit, warming it up with your fingers, and then blotting it on. Especially if you have like textured lips, which I do, which a lot of other brown women do. This is just gonna help you blend and get as smooth of a texture as possible. The other advantage of this technique, her lips are very blurred. The outsides, it's not like a straight line. So with this, you can really precisely apply while still getting that blurred effect, which you would not be able to do with lipstick. It's going to leave a harsh line. Okay. And I know I said she didn't line her lips. She doesn't. But what I think she does instead is she almost takes the blush or a darker version of the blush, and it's because it's very matte, so that's why I think she does this. That's the real tea. And she kind of sets the outside, And that's it. Let me take my hairpins down. I just washed my hair, so it should be semi-dry. That's it. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you learned. And if you like it, please like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know if you'd like to see any other makeup tutorials. Thank you. Have a great weekend.